Hello everybody, welcome back to Norwich Talk for another match reaction. We're going to be reacting to Norwich City's 1-0 loss to Champions League chasing Chelsea, Frank Lampard's Chelsea, whatever you want to call them, Chelsea, in a game that I found rather quite boring, to be honest with you, and I'm sure we're all feeling the same. As you can tell by the title of the video, I'm describing it as a snooze fest. I'm glad it's not anger at this point, to be honest with you. I feel like I'm going a little bit insane. I'm glad it's not anger, as I said. It's just sort of a numb feeling, and I imagine that feeling will carry on until the new season starts for Norwich City. When I say I'm glad it's not anger, I'm glad Norwich City haven't played diabolically like I sort of called we would. It was an alright game. Yeah, I don't really care for the game, to be honest with you. I don't think the Norwich players looked like they did. I imagine they did. Obviously, Stuart Webber in his conference said that they obviously do care. It's just a bit difficult to sort of replicate or reciprocate their feelings onto the pitch in terms of their performance levels. They continue to be quite low. Chelsea didn't pose too much of a threat, but before we sort of get into all of that, we'll look at the lineup. The lineup that saw Kenny McLean, Josip Drmic, Lucas Rupp, and I think it was Todd Cantwell all come back into the team. Now, I'm not really fussed about them changes. I don't really understand them, to be honest with you. I understand Cantwell and Kenny McLean. I put them in my preferred lineup. Rupp, I can understand the sort of idea behind him. He's not brilliant, but I understand the idea. I think he could be decent next season. I think Rupp's problem is that he has the right ideas. It's just a case of whether he can actually do them. Josip Drmic, I wouldn't have started for this game. I'd have started Adam Eder because I think he'll be quite important for next season for Norwich City. However, that wasn't the case. And for quite a lot of the game, not much happened. Now, it seemed to be sort of Norwich City's luck that we conceded the goal in the fashion that we did, which was Cantwell's just marking and closing down of Pulisic was diabolical, fairly embarrassing from him, and Timm Klose's marking, or his man marking of Olivier Giroud, wasn't very good. Now, Olivier Giroud's a World Cup winner, let's not get that wrong, he's a very good player, but at the very least I think Timm Klose should put up a fight. I put a tweet out at half-time saying I think he's finished at Norwich City, and I think he is, but that isn't me sort of criticising Timm Klose too much, because I look at the bigger picture with Timm Klose, which is that he's 32 and injury prone, and at that very moment I just thought, right, this might be this might be it for Timm Klose, which, you know, it's not a bad thing. I just don't see him having much of an impact at Norwich City throughout the duration of his contract, because he's just getting on in terms of age. And I think he's just sort of losing ability. Now, he's not had a pre-season, of course, or he didn't have a pre-season. He's had almost a year out before coming back into the team, but the point stays the same, and that's the way I'm thinking. I love Timm Klose. He's had a brilliant time at Norwich City. I say he's had a brilliant time. He's had an alright time at Norwich City. He's been a decent player, and obviously he's a wonderful character, and he loves the club, but I think Webber, Stuart Webber that is, of course, will not be pulling any punches when it comes to letting players go at Norwich. Now, I can imagine Timm Klose staying at Norwich, but I can't imagine his role being too prevalent in terms of just playing games, or just in terms of his role in general at the club. Now, you notice how I've gone off on a tangent about Timm Klose, which basically sums up how I can't really say much about the game. I thought Chelsea looked okay. They're going to get what they want, which is probably Champions League football. They've got two very tough games left, which are Wolves and Liverpool, I think, or Manchester United, one of the two. So, you know, they're going to have to really earn their place in the Champions League spots in them games, but this was just far too routine for Chelsea. Now, on paper before the game, we were saying that this Norwich City team could play with freedom, could play with this idea that there's no pressure on their shoulders, they can go out and attack Chelsea, which is, it's nice on paper, it's theoretically a nice idea, as I said in my preview, but Daniel Farkas set his team up like he would any other sort of game or point in the season, which was a very pragmatic style, which was okay. I think that's fair enough, you know, that why change your game style even if you're relegated. I mean, yeah, I don't really know the thinking behind that. I would have thought maybe would have gone for it, but I mean, Daniel Farkas is a head coach, I'm not, for Christ's sake. But it just didn't make for a pleasant viewing from a Norwich City perspective. If you're a neutral and you managed to make it through the full 93 minutes of that game, then fair play to you, because that was incredibly boring. Now, a boring game against Chelsea is what Norwich City might have wanted. Maybe if we weren't already relegated, and maybe if we'd have fought a bit harder for a point, maybe. But, you know, the key word there is maybe, and we aren't fighting for a point. And the result means nothing. So it's incredibly hard to justify that performance. It baffled me a little bit that it took. Well, it didn't baffle me. It just annoyed me that it took nearly 70 minutes for Daniel Farkas to actually make a change, because Norwich did nothing for 70 minutes. Although, as I said, it's not surprising because I think that's sort of Daniel Farkas' style, isn't it? Sort of later substitutions in games. Now, if that was an important game to Norwich City, maybe I'd be a lot more frustrated, but it wasn't. So I don't really care that much. Although I do think there are still massive lessons for Daniel Farkas to learn. Now, I've said and I'll say again, I think he will learn going into next season. But as I said, I must have said this before West Ham. I've always been sort of with this idea that Norwich have been relegated for quite a while, and it would be nice to pick up a little bit of momentum. It'd be very Norwich City to go and beat Man City, wouldn't it? Which would just be quite funny, like doing the double over Man City in a fairly unpleasant season for Norwich City. But yeah, you know what, I'm sat here just trying to think of ideas in terms of the game, and there really wasn't anything. Norwich didn't do much. I think Jamal Lewis had a shot, didn't he? I think Pukki, I saw some tweets saying Pukki replicated that ghost pass from Van Wolfswinkel, which perhaps sums up the second half of his season, and Norwich City's in general. I won't single out Teemu Pukki. But you know, the triple sub was made by Daniel Farkas, and not else much happened. I'm not frustrated. I'm not really bothered at this point. But yeah, they're my thoughts on the game, and there's not much else to take from the game. I think Krul made a couple of decent saves. He made that really good one in the first half. Christian Pulisic as well. He had that ball lobbed over his shoulder, and he took it down quite nicely first time. And Krul made another good save. Timm Klose, a player who I just love. Now, his passing is not particularly brilliant, as is pointed out on Twitter by the Revere end, I think it was. But I can forgive that, to be honest with you, because he is a fantastic shot stopper. And I think my dog has started to cry, which is probably my signal that I need to end the video, because there really isn't else much to say. It's really scraping at the brow at this point. However, please let me know your thoughts on the game if you have any in the comments down below, and just any sort of general queries, any sort of Norwich City questions, or just anything, just to chat about Norwich. I'd love to chat about Norwich. For as much as they annoy me, I do like to talk about them, as I'm sure you can tell from these videos. But yes, make sure you like the video, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, share it with your mates, share it with your uncle, share it with your auntie, and until next time, we'll see you again very, very soon.